This episode is sponsored by the Live Alcohol Experiment, a 30-day science-based and compassion-led journey where you learn to develop a healthier relationship with alcohol without relying on willpower. Why? Because the truth is that willpower runs out. Instead, you learn how to focus on what you gain, not what you give up, so you can feel good about the decisions you make without shame or guilt. With the 30 days of video training, virtual daily coaching, and a private and supportive community, you get that and so much more. Join us today to get happier, healthier, and to take back your life. Your Live Alcohol Experiment starts on the 1st, so sign up at livealcoholexperiment.com. Hi, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to This Naked Mind podcast. And I'm here with Eric. Welcome, Eric. How are you?
Hi, Annie. Great to be on with you today.
Oh, great to have you. So why don't you sort of take us all back to the beginning? Where did it all start with you with alcohol?
Well, my parents were young parents, so by the time I was a teenager, I had two younger brothers. They were 6 and 7 years younger than me, so I ended up with a lot of independence. And it was the mid 70s. There was a lot going on in kind of the crazy world that the 70s were. And I guess I was always trying to, hang out with older friends. And, the time was filled with skiing and sports and cars and girls and keggers in the park and, all kinds of rot gut beer, in keg cups. And, I wanted to fit in, so I just started hanging out in that environment. I lived in a suburb of Seattle that was kind of a blue collar neighborhood. And it was easy for me to get alcohol. I started working at a grocery store when I was 15. And so all the employees there had no problem, getting it for me. And so I became that person that could get people alcohol, wine, champagne, whatever they wanted. And so for me, I didn't really like it. I didn't like the taste. I didn't like how, you got to a certain point that a buzz turned into feeling out of control. And so I had a lot of things that kind of prevented me from fully going down the road of getting into it, full force. When I was a sophomore, I really goofed around, didn't really apply myself. And I think I had good common sense back then to keep me out of the ills of alcohol. And I really changed things around and started hanging out with a different crowd, applied myself to my school and things like that. But, over time through the rest of my high school and college, there was still plenty of drinking going on. It was just there. And I think that I kept kind of pulling myself back to apply myself to school or sports or things like that. And, later on, I still had reasons to not really get involved in alcohol. My dad had a pretty nasty alcohol problem that started showing me the path that I didn't want to go on. And it was hard because I didn't like drinking, but I wanted to fit in. So I just kind of kept sticking my foot in and back out, in, out. The store environment that I worked in for 10 years was, a pretty alcohol infused environment. People partied after work. It was easy to, always be drinking and things like that. But as time went on, I would go long periods without drinking a drop. My dad's situation, like I said, really kept me from, allowing myself. I would pull myself back. And this continued on and off, probably through my 20s. But then, I got into my 30s and I'd gone through a big fitness phase. And, I had a young child and got remarried after a divorce. And, I just started falling into kind of a pattern, in my 30s. My wife and I were very social. My work was stressful. family life was stressful. And I just started drinking a little more and more as time went on, and kind of got pulled in, even though I knew that I shouldn't. It slowly over time just kind of pulled me into this phase that I loved, from a standpoint of, fitting in with a lot of great friends and a lot of great events. We had football games and parties, and every event seemed to have alcohol, and it was a lot of fun. And I kept telling myself that I'm setting a much better example for my children than my dad did. And what I learned later is that I was setting a horrible example. It was not something that I ultimately accepted and was proud of. In fact, I ultimately, didn't like myself because of that. As I got into my 40s and early 50s, I really started to feel a lot of anxiety, over my drinking. I felt guilt, I felt shame, I wanted more for myself. And what I would do a lot of times is I would just ramp up my fitness protocol so that I felt good, to take care of my health issues, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. So I felt fitness was always my answer. And, that would work for 6 months to 9 months. And then I would, kind of continue to slowly ramp up my drinking. Whiskey Coke was something that I was drinking on a nightly basis as I got into my 50s. And then, of course, I would invent reasons, to have other types of drink. If we're having Asian food, I would have sake. The Italian food, you had to have red wine. Celebrations, champagne. Football games, you have mimosas. But later on, I realized it was just ways to justify drinking more.
Yeah. Yeah. That was,
So, when I really started to, you know, get into my 50s, I really started struggling. And I knew that I was basically in trouble. Deep down, I knew it, from a standpoint of, when you come home and you want to have 3 or 4 drinks, you start to realize the patterns are starting to really catch up to you. And I ultimately, kind of had to go into the mode of doing a transformation. And this was in about 3 years ago. And at first I was thinking, I would approach it the same way, where it's like, oh, I'm going to do all these great things to help myself, creativity, fitness, all these things. But I stopped myself this time, and I realized I needed to take a real inventory of myself, and I needed to, look at the root problems. And what I realized is that my relationship with alcohol was causing me huge amounts of anxiety. It was causing me to feel depressed. It was making me feel shameful, guilty. And it was time to do something about it. So I really started searching for resources. I had gone to adult children of alcoholics back, and done a 12-step program a long time ago. And I garnered some pieces out of that. But when I came across your book, the first thing that I noticed right away is that, within the first 10 pages, some of the things you outlined about your life were very much things that I could, relate to. And, I think that's very helpful when you start a journey in this, is knowing that others are struggling with the same things you are. But, it was really your information that you gave around, having a conscious mind versus the unconscious mind that really hit home for me. I think I had a decent amount of conscious mind when I was younger, But I think that I had gone so far down the path of dependence that my conscious mind had been blurred to the extent that I couldn't summon it, except for, doing things like, justification, and finding ways to justify my drinking. And, you know, uh, I started to apply, some of the things that you put forward in your book. And it, I made a decision that I was not going to drink ever again. And, here I am 2.5 years later. I've really become much, much healthier, much happier, much more creative. I carry your book around in my car. I'm probably on Amazon one of your largest buyers of the book, because I have an open invitation to anybody that I will provide them a copy of your book. And I probably have, a half dozen copies here at home, and at work. I used to, when I worked in the office, I would, hand them out freely there. And it's amazing how many people have been appreciative of me handing that out. So I guess that's my story in a nutshell.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I actually had a friend, and it's funny how that works, is like, and from your own experience that it worked, but he didn't have a drinking story. And so, and I'm a friend. And so I think it's harder to imagine that your friend is going to be able to help, right? But he's like, well, I know this one person who's struggling. So he gave them a copy, and then they reported back, and then he gave someone else a copy, and he called me yesterday, and he's like, okay, I'm convinced, but he didn't, sort of learn it on his own. But that's just the coolest how it happens, sort of word of mouth, and like the ripple effect is what comes into my, mind like that. Because one person changing, not only do other people start to change in their lives, but also just the positive changes in every other area where your job is concerned, or your health is concerned, or the example you're setting is concerned. Anyway, that's just awesome. Thanks for sharing all that. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that, the first year, had its challenges. Um, Aside from, your, listening to your podcasts, and I was on your app there for quite a while, and, just having reassurance that are people out there struggling along with you, or at least challenging themselves along with you, and seeing victories and learning from defeats, I think is an important part. And, I think everybody is not going to be at a state where they're willing to, finish their relationship with alcohol right off the bat. But I think, just a multitude of resources and books, and just getting a support system. My family was very supportive. Even a lot of friends that I think may be a little threatened by, the change, and, maybe, feeling that I was going to be somewhat judgmental in that, have reached out and supported me. So I think that that's a key part to kind of making, an easier path to your commitments, to either evaluating your relationship with alcohol or ending your relationship with alcohol.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I wanted to kind of follow up in your story on is you said you just made a decision. And one of the points I like to talk about is how powerful that one big decision can be. And I think that decision needs to come from a lot of pre-work. I feel like and it's really like the nuance here is hard. So let's try to unpack this together, because I think it's a worthwhile topic. But the distinction between all the many, no, I'm never drinking again decisions I made when I was then just going to go ahead and drink the next day, but like in the pain. So I was making decisions in pain, waking up in pain, seeing problems in my life, being like, no, I'm on a break. I'm not drinking again. I made all of these decisions. So it's like, okay, well, so what made that one decision different? Did you have a experience like that?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not something that happens. I didn't read your book and then go, I'm going to stop drinking, but it was the cumulative feelings of I would say guilt of having so many day ones. You wouldn't believe how many day ones I had. And I didn't want, I think it got to be where I just didn't want that feeling any longer. And I felt that after, 3 months of kind of doing inventory and building my tool set, that I was really ready to make that commitment. And I think my prior day ones, I didn't have the tool set. I didn't have the mindset, and I just wasn't ready. I wanted to keep drinking alcohol. And I think that, because I started questioning this, in my early 50s and went through these kind of ups and downs. But I think each kind of step along the way, I was building my tool set. But I think that until you are at that point, it's really hard to moderate. And the other learning is that I accepted the fact that I couldn't moderate. I think that's a big one. And I that's a humbling experience, and you have to get over the shame of it. You have to get over the guilt of it, and you have to then want something better for yourself. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a better example for my children. I wanted to be a better husband. I wanted to be a better brother. And I wanted to be for myself. I wanted to be more creative. I wanted to live the last third of my life, doing something of meaning. And I think one question that really hit home to me is, when is the party going to stop? Life was a party. I mean, it was going from one event to another, throughout the week, the weekends, it was all planned out, scripted for a good month or two in advance. And I saw my dad, pass away, and we kind of had an estranged relationship, but I saw him pass away in 2018, and alcohol truly contributed to his passing. And I just, it was inspiration for me not to allow the last third of my life go that path. And so I think it's a cumulative effect of many, many things, both internal and, the ability to, put down your ego and seek out resources. And I know a lot of people that I've handed your book for, I know they're not ready for it now, but it's just one more step in their journey. The last little thing about it is I sat there and I looked at my last drink, and it was a hot buttered rum. And I kind of laughed when I was dumping it out, and it was my last drink. And I said, "Oh, you were really just concocting that up to have one more drink that night." And I knew at that moment that okay, this is absurd.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I feel like it was very similar for me. Like, I mean, first of all of those in the moment decisions were made from a place of pain and fear and lack, but nothing had changed internally. Like, I didn't have any different beliefs about alcohol. So I was making these decisions, these broad sweeping, I'm never drinking again decisions, when I still believed that alcohol was the thing that was going to make my evenings fun and make my, days more enjoyable and able to get through the difficult times and, able to fall asleep better, able to, loosen up more, all of these things. And so there was nothing behind it. And it was like, I mean, just purely willpower. It's like, okay, if I'm going to be
Yeah.
successful here, because I'm going to be successful at forcing myself, keyword force, to do something that, like, I don't want to do at the core of me. And then the decision that happened. And by the way, all those little decisions, one of the first things, like, try to help people do, is what helped me is like, just try to get off that cycle of those little decisions, because they're so, it's, I believe, more toxic in a lot of ways than just allowing yourself to drink while you're learning, because it is so intense to not understand why you can't keep commitments to yourself, because you don't have the visibility into the fact that the commitment is basically saying, hey, I really want this thing, but I'm going to force myself never to do it again. But then the big decision for me was from a very different place. Like, I had the knowledge, I finally had the understanding, and then what followed the knowledge was the emotion. I had the desire. And it wasn't just negative emotion like fear, like I never want to do it again. It was actually positive emotion of like hope and anticipation and what could things be like, and oh, I didn't really need this anyway, and all of those sorts of things. And so going from drinking every day to, cold turkey, never, haven't drank since, 6 years later, 6.5 years later, is like, was really, I wouldn't say effortless, because there were so many different new social scenarios. I think it would have been pretty effortless if I would have, been lifted out of my life and lifted out of my friend groups and all that sort of stuff. But because mentally it was quite effortless, but socially, I don't think it was effortless at all. But it was a very different, it was a decision that actually had, there's this, like, I can make a decision to fly. I have no ability to fly, right? Or I can make a decision, like I can go through all the motions and, buy a plane ticket and then make a decision to fly. And then I actually have the ability. So making these decisions to do something you can't actually do, as evidenced by every single time I broke that decision to myself in the past, it was just really destructive. But then that single decision was so powerful, because instead of, once I had the knowledge, which I had the proverbial plane ticket, it was like, okay, I could sit here and like wishy-wash about it and just create more inner drama and inner stress, or I could just be done. And like that became so much more attractive. And then once that decision was made, it was like all the noise faded. And it was just like, oh, like all that, am I going to, am I not going to? How much is it going to be? What is it going to be? Is it going to be a hot buttered rum or a glass of
Yeah.
wine? Like what is the deal?
Yeah, I think you touch on a key element. You have to have that positive kind of energy moving forward.
Yeah.
And for me, I just had so many things that I wanted to do. And when I was reading your book, I was surprised you said to keep drinking while you read it. And I didn't understand that, but I did. And then later on, I realized the reasoning behind that. Because yes, when you finally come to where you feel like you have your entire tool chest, and you have that real positive energy of moving forward, it's powerful. And I was so relieved, after a short period of time, that I didn't have to think about drinking anymore. I didn't have to make sure I was going to the store. I didn't have to figure out this. I didn't have to figure out that. And that just freed me up for other endeavors, kind of on a mental health standpoint, working on additional, anxiety relievers, meditation, and a lot of other things that I went on and did, with diet and stuff like that. It freed up my bandwidth, because I didn't go through the cycle of ramping up to drinking and then feeling the guilt and shame of drinking. And you just keep going around and round and round. And yeah, it was a great uplifting, of a whole bunch of baggage that I didn't need to carry any longer.
I love that. That's so great. And so how was it for you socially?
Well, it had its challenges, so time frame was, going into football season, and we have quite the our group of people we hang out with, is named the Rat Pack. And football games are a big thing with the Seattle Seahawks, and going to football games and the whole partying around it. So that was a little bit of a challenge. I just knew what I needed to do, and I pulled myself back some. My wife continued to participate, a little more than I did, which was fine. I made it through 2019, kind of unscathed, started to learn how to be social without, drinking, and then got really almost a reprieve from COVID. It extended my period of time where I didn't have to be social, um, but it allowed me to kind of take things at my own pace, and I've had to relearn, things, and everybody's been supportive. I if people want to talk about it, I talk about it. If they don't, there's no judgment on my part, because I'm just here for people as a resource. People know that I'm not drinking, and some people will talk to me about it, and I feel really good about sharing my story with anybody that wills, because I think there's a lot of people that are really struggling with alcohol. And unfortunately, I think COVID has actually accelerated that for a lot of people, because really, people did kind of some of the most dangerous type of drinking, which is kind of stay at home and have boredom and depression and things like that.
Yeah, it is literally the most dangerous type of drinking is self-medication. It changes how our bodies respond to it. And it's it's really, two things have happened, and I always try to look for the silver lining, because oh man, you can really go down a deep dark hole when you start to think about how this has impacted people and families and things like that. But one of the silver linings is that when you do kind of take off the brakes on your drinking, when you say, okay, I'm just going to use this is my tool, this is my primary tool, and by the way, then your other tools that you used to use do fall away. I mean, that's been my experience and many other people's experience. I used to have like multiple things propping me up, right? I'd have exercise,
Right.
and I had, all of these things, and I took them all away. And then I was really on this one very teetery thing. And COVID has accelerated that journey in some people. And sometimes it does have to get worse before it gets better. So sometimes people have to go through that, really having things, kind of accelerate and realizing, hey, this isn't working.
Right.
I thought everything, and this is great. I'm working from home. I can drink at noon. Like I thought that would be great. And then when it's not great, I can't tell you how many emails we get. They're like, it's not great. Like,
Right.
I start drinking at noon and I'm miserable by 4 p.m. Then I'm just kind of slogging through dinner, and I can't even, I fall asleep on the couch,
Yeah.
and, and that's when people start to look to change. But, unfortunately still so many people look to change just through beating themselves up and making themselves those decisions in the moment, and not really having the understanding or the emotion, the positive emotion. I really like how you said that, whatever energy you bring to it is so vital for your success. I think that's just so important.
Yeah. I don't think I would have made it through very well the last 3 years. I've had some family issues with my mother, and she recently passed away. And the COVID situation, stressful job situation. I have been just much more able to handle, and actually, feel like I can take on the day. Any day they can throw anything they want at me now. And, I just kind of stay in the moment and stay focused and take it, one hour at a time. And I don't think if I would have been drinking, I could have, I would have been a mess. I don't think that I would have been anywhere near. I think things would have been pretty darn ugly because of everything that's transpired over the last 3 years.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. I can't even imagine. Yeah, and it doesn't feel like it in the moment. We have one of our certified coaches, and he had a really unique experience where he went through the death of a parent drinking and medicating, and then he went through the death of a parent after he had stopped drinking. And he'll talk to anybody who wants to talk to him about it. He is just so grateful for that second experience, and almost the redeeming experience of allowing the grief and allowing the process and allowing the pain. And he's like, I would have never thought that I could get through it, but it was such a gift to myself and to her memory to
Yeah.
have gone through it without drinking.
Yeah. Yeah. I was always interested in your dissertation about your corporate life. Corporate drinking is another tough one. You know, when you're out with coworkers and the expectations of celebration slash socialization, and COVID's helped that one a little bit, but the expectations when you're in a business dinner function are real, and it's a really interesting dynamic. But I don't shy away. I just come at the situation with honesty, and again, I always am amazed at people who will, like, kind of publicly, oh, that's great, because I'll say something like, I'm just trying to, improve my health or something like that. And but then later on, maybe they'll come up to me and say, so what made you, think about this or start or do this?
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll start a conversation where it's amazing how many people put on that happy face, but are struggling behind the scenes with their own issues slash relationship with alcohol. And I think for people who have gone down the road of some measure of recovery, it's nice to be a resource for others, because it gives you inspiration to continue your own challenges, because not drinking is always going to have challenges in my mind. There are still moments when I will say, oh, I could probably just have one glass of wine with my wife at a nice dinner. And it's those fleeting moments that make you realize that I'm gonna carry this to my grave. It's something that, while I know I'm not going to have that drink, it never goes away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's just I think that's a really good way to think about it, is that, it's something you used to do. It's people you used to date come into your mind from time to time. Let's all be honest, places you used to live, right?
Yeah,
Jobs
yeah,
you used to have.
right.
There's no real getting around that. And it's worth saying, because if we think that, we have to be realistic, I think, but I think that we can also, so much of my expectations have been exceeded,
Yeah,
that I'm really willing to be, and I think we should be realistic. I think there's a lot of danger in trying to make something it's not, or to pretend something it's
yeah.
not. That's
What I
good.
find the most eye-opening of my experience is how prevalent kind of alcohol culture is. When you finally kind of step back and feeling good, and are vibrant in your life, and you're out there. So for me, it was kind of midnight 2019. I was really re-engaging, and I was out there, and all of a sudden I was like, wow, every aspect is permeated by this alcohol culture. It's really shocking, and you can see how your unconscious mind can become such a beast, in able, because everything and everybody out there is pretty much telling you it's okay, and that you should be doing it. Not just that it's okay, that it's preferred, and preferred, at a regular basis. And yeah, so that one was kind of hard to start to think, how am I going to exist in a culture like this? But then you start to kind of make your way, and again, the positives start to hugely outweigh the fact that that's the way it is, and you're able to kind of stand up to it.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. I love that. Oh, so good. Well, let me ask you the question that I always ask at the end, which is, if you were going to go back in time and talk to Eric, who was, not, wondering about this sort of thing and feeling like he was drinking more than he wanted to be, and tell him about what life is like now, what would you say?
Well, I'm doing all the things at 60 years old that I wish that could tell my 30-year-old self to stay on the track of doing then. Um, I'm doing a podcast with my good buddy. I'm doing my work in great terms for myself now. I'm helping other people. I'm learning about a whole host of different topics, and even cryptocurrency. I'm just doing all these things that are just expanding my mind and horizons. I'm writing. I want to do a video podcast down the road. All the things that I should have been doing in my 30s, but I'm playing catch up now. And I give myself a break that I succumb to social and family and job issues and pressures, and I don't feel guilt about it, but I wish I would have been doing the things that I'm doing now when I was 30 years old.
I love that. I love that so much. So what is your podcast, just in case people want to tune in?
Oh, my buddy and I have been long fans of horse racing. And so we have a podcast called the Horse Racing Banter Podcast. And basically it's just my buddy and I, kind of going back and forth about, all things that are related to horses and horse racing and things like that.
Oh, that's so much fun. I love that so much.
Yeah, we just cooked it up, in October. And, my new methodology is I'm not thinking about things anymore. I'm just going to do them.
Nice.
Downloaded an easy program. They make stuff so easy, and we just started doing it. And all of a sudden people started listening, and they like it. And we like having it, as a hobby. So we do that. And yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. Well, we hope to do it as a travel video log down the road when travel opens up, where we actually go to different parts of the world and video local tracks and their culture, go to Hong Kong or go to Melbourne, Australia, or back to Toronto for something like that. So it's fun to dream again.
Yes, that is so fun. What a fun thing. And yeah, I'm such a big proponent of find something that gives you energy. There's something we lose track of that, and we think, well, there's nothing. What am I going to do if I don't drink? But there's something. We're all passionate about something. We just have to sometimes be patient and listen for it, and pay a lot of attention to the things that light us up and give us those good feelings, and then, chase those and stop listening to all the silly voices in our head that are, who are you to do that? That's awesome.
Yeah, just do it. Yeah.
Let's do it. It's so great. Well, it's so cool, Eric. It's been really a pleasure. I've really loved hearing your story and having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Annie. Keep up the great work. I really appreciate everything what you and your organization is doing. And I'm here as a resource for anybody who is either listening or even your organization to help out at any time.
Oh, that's great. I really appreciate that. Hey, I'm so excited because we are literally just about to start another live alcohol experiment. And if you don't know about the alcohol experiment, you need to literally drop everything right now and go to livealcoholexperiment.com. Here's the thing. This is a 30-day challenge, and it's designed to interrupt your patterns and put you back in touch with the best version of you. You'll know it's that version that's living the most joyful life, that version that doesn't need alcohol to relax or have a good time, and that version that's having more fun and is more peaceful than ever. Again, it's just a 30-day challenge. It's live every single day. It's starting on the 1st, so hurry up. Join me at livealcoholexperiment.com. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.